still, even after all this time, Loki lives in my head rent free. He's now him, like the god of Marvel. He holds it all together. From now on, every movie we see from here on out after Loki, you have to understand that the only reason why the movie is even alive is because of Loki. He controls everything. That's crazy. Like, he's holding it all together. Marvel confirms what God Loki is now after Loki Season 2 finals. What is he?
The Loki Season 2...
Bro, this whole time, the sound right here is what actually controls the sound in my recording and not my computer. This whole time, I'm sitting here thinking, like, why is the video so loud when it's not even loud in my ear? It's because...
finale was epic. It was perfect. The story arc for Loki in the MCU, going from the first Thor film to the Avengers film to now,
amazing.
From the God of Mischief to the protector of the literal multiverse, could be the best arc that we have ever seen in the MCU. But what exactly did that finale mean? What specifically does it mean for the multiverse for Loki? What specifically is Loki doing? We've explained this in a few videos. However, Marvel Studios has finally come out and basically told us exactly what it means. Now, a lot of you have thought Loki, God of Stories. We've talked about this as well. And as it turns out, we were only half right. Marvel Studios acknowledges that this is Loki, God of Stories here at the finale of Season 2 for Loki, but it's also...
That's a comic thing, God of Stories. That's a comic thing because I never heard of that before. I did do a little bit of research, and I know that there is such thing as a Loki, God of Stories. I thought that was just something that they were making up.
Not. And this may sound confusing, but it's actually not. Marvel Studios Loki, but it's also is Loki, God of Stories here at the finale of Season 2 for Loki, but it's also not. And this may sound confusing, but it's actually not. Marvel Studios puts it in a really, really great way that makes you respect Loki even more. So let's break down what they said. But first, if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the recent MCU videos. And if you subscribe and leave a comment down below, you're automatically entered in our giveaway for a chance to win a PS5, an Xbox Series X, some Marvel Legends items, or some DC items. The winner gets to pick one item.
It's so crazy how much of a fan I used to be, like, of Xbox. And now, like, I've had PlayStation for so many years, but it's like damn, if I would have never got a PlayStation, I would have never been able to, like, experience the true sheer power of what gaming is. I still do want to get an Xbox for, like, Forza and, like, I'm sure there's another exclusive.
And we pick one winner at the end of each month. So if you are unaware, Aaron Moorhead was the director for Loki Season 2. And he was recently on the Phase Zero podcast from comicbook.com talking about the Loki finale specifically. And he talks about the actual god Loki from Norse mythology, not from Marvel Comics, but from Norse mythology, which is really cool. And they explain that Loki doesn't really just become the god of stories, he becomes the god of everyone's story. I'll explain in more detail in just a bit, but basically in the comics, Loki, the god of stories, can do anything he wants. He could write anything into existence, past, present, or future. If he wrote a story, it became true, hence Loki, god of stories. And this was on Marvel Studios' mind from the very beginning, according to Aaron Moorhead. This is what he said in the podcast. One of the early days discussions about how we're going to be treating the entire final episode, especially the last half of the final episode, we were actually looking at the Wikipedia for Loki, not the comic book character, but the actual god. And he was the god of stories. And when we looked up at the whiteboard that Tom and Kevin Wright, the producer, brought us in to see, it had written God of Stories. It was just a little note somewhere, and we really latched onto that. And so we feel like somebody who is the god of mischief, he's the god of chaos and trickery and all that, he's transformed into, I wouldn't even say god of time, I would say he's the god of everyone's story. And he's a librarian that protects it and allows it to flourish. So this is really interesting and is actually another characteristic that makes you love Loki even more when you hear this really explained. Loki essentially did become He Who Remains. He is the god of stories. He could rewrite anything, which is his power in the comics. He could rewrite any existing event that had happened in the Marvel Comics universe, changing the past, therefore changing the future. This is what Kang did essentially. He would interfere with the timelines to make it exactly as he wanted it to. Plus, as he mentioned several times, he wrote the final story. He wrote everything, including all of season 2 for Loki, and Loki ending up back there at the Citadel at the end of time. So essentially, He Who Remains kind of had that power, but now Loki has it. But there is one key difference here. Loki is actually truly good now. So he doesn't use...
That's what I'm saying. Like, Loki's actually a true, like, he's a good guy. There's no more bad intention in him. He's a good dude. Like, that's so fire. It's kind of sad though. Like, they showed a shot at the very end of the last episode on season 2. They showed a shot of him in the tree of life. That's basically what it is. With all the timelines, and he was just, I don't know. It looked like a relieving look, but also like, damn, I had to sacrifice. This is the sacrifice. Like, he's just like, I wonder what it feels like to be. Do he just sit in that chair all day, every day? Because he's still human, but technically he's not human. He's a god. He has powers that regular people don't. So I guess he I don't know.
His power to rewrite time, but instead he protects it. He is protecting every single person in the multiverse, and it comes back down to what him and Sylvie were saying from the very beginning in Loki season 1. It's all about free will. Loki was in pursuit of free will from the beginning, and now he is the protector of free will, sitting at the center of the multiverse, protecting it, which is what Aaron Moorhead says here. But it's even more impressive for Loki if you think about a few key things, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But first, big thank you to Highland Titles for sponsoring this video. Before we leap back into the world of superpowers, I've got something truly incredibly popular. Become a lawyer to understand how HighlandTitles.com and use code COSMIC. So if you truly want to understand how far Loki has come, if you truly want to understand the power that he has now, but also his character now, the essence of who he is now and how much he has changed and how benevolent he is now, we have to go back to the very first Avengers film. Right before Iron Man and Captain America show up, Loki has a group of people in public kneeling because he tells them to kneel. And he gives the big Loki speech. Most of us know it. He says, "Is not this simpler? Is this not your natural state? It's the unspoken truth of humanity, that you crave subjugation. The bright lure of freedom diminishes your life's joy in a mad scramble for power. Your identity, you were made to be ruled. In the end, you will always kneel." This is Loki in the first Avengers film. This is the complete opposite of what Loki did for the entire multiverse in the season finale for season 2. In the end, which is kind of Loki now, he is kind of the god of time now, even Marvel Studios basically states that. But in the end, nobody will kneel, and it's all because Loki chooses that for the multiverse. He actually sacrifices himself so that nobody will have to kneel. And what is very interesting is that line of Loki being the god of time, where Aaron Moorhead says, "I wouldn't even say the god of time, I would say he's the god of everyone's story, and he's a librarian that protects it and allows it to flourish." The protects it and allows it to flourish part kind of refers to two different things. One is Kang and all of the variants of Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang. He is protecting it from Kang, however, the TVA is doing most of that work. What Loki did was enable the multiverse to exist. He empowers it, he gives it life, and he made sure He Who Remains was dead so that he could not interfere and only make one sacred timeline, but the multiverse could actually exist. However, there's another part to this. He is also protecting it from himself. Loki, if he wanted to, could do whatever he wanted to with the multiverse. He could literally be the god of stories, rewrite everything to exactly how he wanted it to, just like He Who Remains did. So obviously he's not doing that. The whole point was for everybody to have free will, but if Loki wanted to, he could become the actual god of stories and change everything. When Aaron Moorhead says, I wouldn't even say the god of time, that kind of means he could be called that, but instead they'd rather call him a librarian that protects the multiverse and allows it to flourish. But basically that is saying you could call him the god of time because he can control all of time, literally in every multiverse. And I think this is going to come into play in a pretty big way when we get to Avengers Secret Wars and the multiverse actually is falling apart. Because remember, now how Loki is protecting the universe is literally giving everybody free will. He's not going to interfere. He is protecting that free will and he is allowing it to flourish. However, he is also allowing bad things to possibly still happen, which is a conversation Loki and Sylvie did have with each other.
Wait, so He Who Remains, he was messing with the timelines? I don't understand. Like, is that why the good guys were always able to win? Because it seems to me like the dude, Jonathan Majors, Kang, on a season, the last episode of season 1, is it his name? His name is Kang in the He Who Remains. That's not Loki. Well, damn it, Kang in the last episode of season 1. I guess you would consider Kang a good guy because he created the TVA to get I guess, okay, so the variants that they were picking up, the variants that the TVA were picking up, those variants, the reason why they are variants is because Kang saw what they were going to do in the timeline and he didn't like it, so he picked them up, therefore taking their free will. I think I'm right. Let me know if I'm right in the comments. I think I'm right about that. Sylvie was one of the variants he got, the TVA got when she was really young, because I guess Kang didn't like what she was going to do in the future, or whatever she was going to do. So he grabbed her. Did he grab her before she could do something really bad? Is he that type of god, or... Okay. A little confused.
Each other, stating that even if they did manage to save everything, Earth is still a mess. But the whole point was they still deserve a chance to try. And that is what Loki has given everybody until incursions start happening. And we know they are because that is literally the whole premise of Deadpool 3 and Avengers Secret Wars. Yes, the TVA can do their best to try to get rid of Kang the Conqueror variants, but what if one of those variants, or many of them, like we've seen in Quantumania, learn how to exist outside of space and time? Well, the TVA monitors timelines, and if they find a bad Kang variant doing something, they go to that timeline and they simply prune him. But how do you go to something that exists outside of space and time? How do you lock onto that coordinates? You can't. It's like if they wanted to find Loki, they probably couldn't. Speaking of, if they tried to lock onto a coordinates, obviously they know they could probably prune themselves and end up in the void, but if you were trying to use a temp pad that wasn't He Who Remains' temp pad to try and find the Citadel at the end of time, you couldn't, because there is no coordinates, because it doesn't exist in space. That is most likely where these other evil variants of Kang that we saw in Quantumania's post-credit scene are right now. They have mastered time travel because that's what Kang the Conqueror does, so they're outside of time and space. So Loki has given everybody free will, and it's an amazing story arc for him because it's essentially a complete opposite version of who we met in the first Thor and Avengers film. Instead of making everybody else kneel, essentially he is kneeling for everybody else to be able to have free will. That is until Secret Wars. We'll have to wait and see what happens there, but give us your best theory of what's going to happen with Loki in Avengers Secret Wars, and let us know how you feel about Loki's story arc in the MCU. Drop your thoughts and comments down below. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest videos. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter as well. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.
So he's gonna be in Secret Wars? So, okay, if I had to make a guess, it seems to me like Loki, since he has control of all these timelines, can he like do what God did, like how God put Jesus in the world? Can Loki put a variation, like a variant of himself into the world and move through him, or can his spirit be in the timeline that he wants to be in to communicate? Like it does. If he's gonna be in Secret Wars, unless Cosmic Wonder is assuming thinks he's gonna be in Secret Wars, like he can't leave that chair because he controls the timelines. If he leaves, they die, right? That's what I'm guessing. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments if I'm on to something.